What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Merach NovaRow R50 rower, and we're going to be comparing it to the Concept 2 Model D. So over the last 13 years or so, I've owned pretty much every single iteration of the Model D, and I've tested a bunch of other rowers as well. And I have to say that the Merach NovaRow R50 is the best budget alternative to the Concept 2. So I'm going to take you on a look around both of the models, comparing them side by side, and then I'm going to give you my final thoughts on how they perform versus each other and why I think it is the best budget alternative for the Concept 2. All right, so here we have the Merach NovaRow R50 side by side with the Concept 2 Model D, and as you can probably already tell, the design and dimensions are nearly identical. So the setup was pretty painless. It's almost identical to the Concept 2 setup. All you have to do is screw on the feet and put on the slide and then attach the monitor and you are good to go. It takes probably like 15 minutes. It doesn't come with a tool like the Concept 2 does, but I mean, it just uses normal hand tools, so it's not really a big deal. The slide is slightly longer than the Concept 2, which doesn't really make too much of a difference. It's only about like a ½ inch longer. So the difference is pretty much negligible. The seating position is very similar as well, though the footholds are slightly different. They're both adjustable, but the Concept 2 accommodates a bigger foot compared to the Merach. The seat on the Merach is a more contoured seat, and it's also quite a bit softer than the Concept 2's. That's going to come down to personal preference, but the dimensions between the two seats are nearly identical as well. Now going back to the footholds, the straps on the Merach are Velcro straps, and there's a large D-ring that you use to pull the strap open, and then the footholds adjust pretty similar to the Concept 2, though it does require a little bit more work, and they don't match up the exact same. So if you row on a 5 on the Merach, it's not the same as the 5 on a Concept 2. I think it's a little bit shorter on the Merach. Not too much of a difference, but the strap placement is going to be higher up on your foot on the Merach versus the Concept 2. Something that you have to just get used to. The distance between the handle and the seat is longer on the Merach. Not a huge difference. And then the handles are right about the same diameter and grip. The Merach has a kind of rough texture coating to it, and then it's got an open design in the middle so that you can do some one-handed rowing if you have adaptive athletes. Concept 2 also has that as well. And then the grip surface is a little bit softer. The chain is a nickel-plated chain, similar to the Concept 2, which also uses a nickel-plated chain. Going back to the side profile here, I want to show you that the height is virtually identical between the two. I think it's like 14 inches off the top of my head, but I can't remember exactly. And then the seating position, or the monitor position relative to the seating position, is a little bit more adjustable on the Merach versus the Concept 2. That is the lowest that the Concept 2 is going, and the Merach can go quite a bit lower. Also can get to right about the same height as a Concept 2. So not a big difference, though the Merach is more adjustable if that's something that you were looking for. It does have a little phone holder right here. Concept 2s on this model. This is right before the rower came out, and the rower now has a little phone holder right here on the arm. But the Concept 2 used to come with a little phone holder that would go onto the top, which nobody ever used because it would just fall off, so it's not really a big difference. Taking a look at the flywheel, they pretty much look identical. They both use 32 fan blades. They're both adjustable in terms of resistance, 1 to 10. It works the exact same way. And though it does have a 1 through 10 adjustment, I did notice that the Merach was a little bit more, or had a little bit more resistance on the comparable numbers. So I would say where I'd normally row, which is between a 5 and 6 on the Concept 2, would feel more just like a normal 5 on the Merach rower. Now, when it comes down to like size, they're pretty much identical. A lot of the design is pretty much the same thing between the two rowers. So if you're looking for something that had a very similar feel to a Concept 2 rower, there's really nothing that I've tried that is like the Merach. Like, it's almost identical in every single way in terms of dimension to the Concept 2 rower. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the differences between the Merach's display and the Concept 2's display. The Merach has a more narrow, kind of rectangular shape to its display versus the Concept 2, which has just a square display. Both offer the same kind of readouts as far as strokes per minute, split times, meters, wattage, and of course calories. The Merach has no backlight. The Concept 2 from this Model D and up to the rower now have backlights, which is a huge plus. I'm not sure it's a $500, $400 plus, but it is a nicer display. The cabling is a single cable on the Concept 2. The Merach has like 3 cables, and then it has 3 cables that come out that go to the flywheel as well. So it doesn't look as nice, but once again, it's not the same $1,000 price tag as the Concept 2. Now, in terms of response, turning them on, start with a little pull here. The Merach turns on pretty much instantaneously and starts reading pretty much instantaneously as well. I'll do the same with the Concept 2. Turns on instantaneously, but is not reading just yet. So the Merach turns on a little bit quicker than the Concept 2. Now, something with the Merach display that I'm not a huge fan of is that every 5 seconds it'll switch the display between like the split times and wattage, and then it'll go to the calories, strokes per minute, and the meters. So I found that was a little bit more difficult to maintain a steady strokes per minute on the Merach's versus the Concept 2's, which has everything already all laid out for you right there. You can't change or adjust that display. That's just how it goes. You have a set button that changes the functions. If you want to do intervals, you can do that with the Merach. It does have Bluetooth adjustability, and you can connect to the Merach app, which is super duper fast. And then when you turn on the app, it pretty much connects right away. The Merach also has your mode button, and then it has a reset button that you'll use to reset with a long hold. I think the biggest weakness of the NovaRow is the display, and that's really just because it changes between the two readouts and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you're rowing and you're trying to hold a pace, or you're trying to hold like your strokes per minute, it makes it a little bit harder to do on the Merach. Plus, There's no backlight on the Merach, and it is a little bit dimmer. Now, is that a difference that's worth $400 to you? I'll let you decide. All right, so now that we know that the dimensions and the design of the Merach NovaRow R50 and the Concept 2 Model D are nearly identical, but how do they perform versus one another? The first thing that I did when I took out the Merach and set it up was I tested a 2K row. The very first thing that I thought about when I got on and started pulling with the NovaRow was how similar it felt to the Concept 2. From the chain tension to the smoothness, and just about everything felt very similar to the Concept 2. It wasn't until I went back to back versus the Concept 2 that I started to notice any kind of difference, and those differences were very, very minimal. The first thing that I noticed in terms of differences was the chain tension on the Merach NovaRow was a little bit greater than on the Concept 2, but that could just come down to this being a brand new rower versus the Concept 2 being a little bit used, but not really all that old. That still has under 100K meters on it, so it's still a fairly new rower. When it came down to the differences between my ending times and calories on each 500 meter row, they were different. I was a little bit slower and had less calories on the Merach every effort that I did versus the Concept 2. I did two pretty casual efforts, trying to average right around 22 strokes per minute, all the way up to 24 strokes per minute. And I think the Merach, the first time I ended up with a like 214 on my 500, pretty casual pace, and I had 29 calories. The Concept 2, I ended at 205 on my 500 and I had 31 calories. The second set of 500s, I tried a little bit harder, trying to hold a 25 to 27 strokes per minute on the Merach. I ended up with a 2-minute time for the 500 and 32 calories versus the Concept 2, I ended up at 154 with 35 calories. So there is a slight difference in the readout. I think the Merach is a little bit of a harder machine to use, but once again, there are various things that kind of come into play there. Fatigue, it's like almost impossible to replicate the same exact time, but I think the difference there is very similar. And if you wanted a difference at all, or if there was going to be a difference at all, you would probably want it to be slightly harder versus easier. So if we're comparing the difference between the design and performance of the Merach NovaRow R50 versus the Concept 2 Model D relative to the difference in price, which the Model D currently retails at $990, which there are no discounts for. That is just the price that you're going to get the Concept 2 for. And the Merach at $599, we have nearly a $400 difference. The Concept 2 is a rower that you're going to be able to use in a CrossFit competition. It is the standard rower for CrossFit, but you also have the Echo rower as well. So that's something to consider. But if you're not into CrossFit and you're looking for a comparable experience, or even if you are into CrossFit but you don't care about competing, you just want something similar, you can also just train on the Merach at home. You'd have a pretty similar experience to the Concept 2. It's not one-to-one exact. The feel is very similar, but the difference in performance, the Merach tends to be a little bit harder on the efforts. But when it comes down to how different those efforts are, I don't think that it is a $400 difference. And if you wanted to just do WODs in your garage, or even if you wanted to just have rowers at the affiliate that provided a very similar experience to the Concept 2, then I would say the king of value really is the NovaRow R50. I think that this is the closest that anyone has been able to get for a machine that works very similar to the Concept 2. And if you're looking for a budget alternative to the Concept 2, there's really no other rower that is in the argument. So if you guys have any questions about the Merach NovaRow R50, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.